Let's move on to another. Michael Porter has, developed lots of frameworks and to help us understand strategy. And he's, so it's important to look at all of these. Porter's value chain model is important to know because we're looking at what are all the activities that create, deliver, and support a company's product or services. And we're looking at these from the perspective of the primary activities and support activities. So those, support activities are just those things that make it possible for the primary activities to exist. And the primary activities are those that relate directly to the value created in a product or service, like manufacturing. So let's take a look at the value chain. So this is a common model, a visual diagram figure that you'll see. So Porter's value chain of the firm. So you can see down below we have primary activities, and this is the initial value chain, and then others have built onto this and said, oh, it goes beyond this. But look at inbound logistics, so materials handling, delivery, operations, so the manufacturing and assembly, outbound logistics, so order processing and shipping, marketing and sales. This is the product, pricing, the promotion, the place. So marketing and sales, and service, so customer service and repair. So you can say it, so that's your primary activities in an organization where value is created. Then there are these support activities that these support activities support the primary activities along the way. So and across each of the activities down below. So the purchasing activities, the technology, human resources, and just the organization as a whole, the organizational structure. So down below, I mean, doesn't this look like supply chain a little bit? Maybe we haven't extended it quite as far as we could. But this is a value chain, but we're going to talk about this in extension as an extension to our when we think about our supply chain for the firm. So moving back, I'm going to look at how do we alter the value chain? So the value chain model suggests that competition can come from two sources. So our competition can lower the cost to perform an activity. So they've increased efficiency, or they're able to purchase the materials at a lower cost than we can for some reason. So that's one way they can compete. Or the other is adding value. They add value to a product or service. So buyers may be willing to pay more. So they're adding value, but it's a higher quality. Maybe they've placed higher quality controls. So the product is higher. I mean, as a result, that may add expense instead of lowering the cost. It may add an additional expense to the product. So those are the two things. So the value chain model, those are where value chain is saying that the competition can come from. So adding value is a strategic advantage if we possess accurate information regarding customers. So we got to know what the customer and what products are valued, what improvements can be made. So many people have extended the value chain into a whole value system. And this is where when we think of supply chain management, how much information is used within each value chain of the system. So you think about the firm, and we have the firm here in the center. So this is the firm, and we were just looking at this example of the firm's value chain. So the support activities on top, the primary activities on the bottom. So then we have multiple, in this example, we have 3 different suppliers for 3 parts of our product, let's say. So you may have 50, you may have 2 or only 1. So each of those suppliers have their own value chains, and then so there's your firm. So then you have your channels. So your channels, so this could be distributors, warehouses, so retail, and buyers. So channels, our buyers, they all have their own value chain. So this is the interconnection between uh, the supply chain, the value chains of each individual firm along that way. So you can see it's not just within the firm. I think that's more and more organizations are finding that if they help their suppliers reduce costs, so they maybe actually help them reduce costs, then they actually can improve value and the success of their own company. We also have, as part of this, customer relationship management, or CRM. So this is an extension where we're applying value chain to the customers. So CRM includes the activities when we're trying to obtain customers. So we're trying to add customers, both so through our sales and marketing activities, and we will also want to, enhance our relationships with, and once they've purchased, to retain the customer, so that post-purchase relationship. So it's a coordinated set of activities, communication, follow-up, and even reward systems. Ideally, CRM will lead to better customer service, which can help lead to a competitive advantage for a business. If we take a look at some of the examples, when we're looking at the Zara's value chain, we have a few things. So Zara's has, on the inbound logistics side, you can see they have a just-in-time strategy that's IT enabled. And just-in-time is an operations and manufacturing strategy. So they have, and the idea is that you don't keep a large inventory on hand, because inventory carrying costs are quite expensive for a company. So we want to keep our inventory low, and so we can, and so IT helps enable just-in-time for the organization. So most dyes are purchased from its own subsidiaries and reduce costs. So they want their inventory received when they need it. They don't want to receive their inventory, their materials, and have it sit in a warehouse for 2 years before they need it. So other parts of the operations, we have how the information systems in Zara supports decisions made about different fabrics, the cut of the fabric, the price point for the fabric. So we see Zara's actually produces 60% of merchandise in-house, so they do a lot of their own work in-house. So they moved a lot of it in-house, so they have more control over it. So that reduces that power of potential suppliers when you actually are doing it yourself. There are costs associated with it, but there are definitely benefits. So then we have some more that are we go down through outbound logistics, marketing, sales, and service. Outbound logistics, we're looking at conveyor belts, use of conveyor belts, automation of conveyor belts at distribution centers. So this automation allows clothing to reach stores within 48 hours from the distribution center. So these are some of the things, and there are other activities, and then support activities, and how they help support Zara's business strategy. let's go down to the technology one. Technology is integrated to support the primary activities that Xera is focused on. So what's Xera's business strategy? So we've talked about it, and we know what the company does. They make clothing, and they have a strategy to design low cost, high fashion clothing that is not of the highest quality. So I mean, that's that's what they're doing. Um, so Xera's IT staff works with vendors and that help develop those automated conveyor belts and other information system activities. So it's nowadays the IT department doesn't develop software in-house, or at least not very much of it. It's often scripting or maybe developing code to connect systems to um, to use data from one system in another system. So it's not that an IT department will actually design a new ERP system in-house. We'll probably purchase one and we have to configure it to meet our needs. So we already mentioned supply chain management a few times, and this is an approach where a company finds raw components it needs for its product or service. They manufacture the product or service and deliver it to companies. So we're talking about and we're talking about all of those. So inbound logistics, outbound logistics. So from the supply side to the outbound side. So we're looking at how technology can help our supply chains, and we have lots of examples, including Walmart is was the leader in their distribution um, of goods for the stores from their distribution centers. So, and it's more than just technology, but technology is the key for it. And Walmart's example, they use data they collect data from point of sale, so they know what people are buying, and then they allow their vendors to access that data, so they allow their vendors to know what their customers are purchasing, and let them know exactly where an item is located in the store and what shelf location. Supply chain management requires collaboration and coordination with IT to help support a seamless connection. I would say there aren't a lot of examples where there is a seamless connection. I mean, this is the ideal, but it's still most companies are still a long way from maturity in having a strong supply chain management. But this is the ideal. This is what organizations should strive for, in having a seamless connection from suppliers to our customer. Electronic marketplaces can also be used to limit information sharing. So we can we can do some things there. So electronic marketplaces can okay, let's move on to the resource-based view of the firm. The resource-based view is another strategic framework. I say we've already looked at two others so far. So we looked at Porter's 5 forces model in looking at the competitive landscape. Then we looked at Porter's value chain model. So looking at value creation across the primary and support activities of the firm. This is the resource-based view of the firm. This was developed by Jay Barney. I believe he was at the University of Arkansas at the time. The resource-based view of the firm looks at gaining competitive advantage through using information resources. And that's the topic of our entire discussion today. So information resources are identified as those that enable firms to attain competitive advantage, such as rare and valuable resources that aren't commonplace, and those resources that enable firms to sustain competitive advantage that make these are resources that must be difficult to transfer or are relatively immobile. So that sustainable competitive advantage is the ultimate. So we can have a competitive advantage, but then after a year it goes away, or maybe after a quarter it goes away. But are we able to sustain it over time? So sustainable competitive advantage is something we want to happen, and that's where we want resources that are difficult to transfer. So then we have a sort of a heat map looking at information resources at Xeras, and I think this is pretty interesting. So we're looking at how value is created. So looking at value, rarity, and then looking at the sustainability of value. So how easily imitated or substitutable or transferable. And then we have a high, medium, low. That's what the M's, H's, and L's stand for. So value creation, so these are here on the left column. We have our information resources. So we've got our IT infrastructure, our information repository. So we can see the repositories of high value. It isn't very rare. It's sort of in the middle. IT infrastructure is not very rare, so it's in the middle. It's valuable, but it's somewhere in the middle. So we've got medium there, and it's somewhere in the middle in terms of rarity for Xeras. So it's somewhat unique, but it's not of a design that someone could potentially create the same infrastructure in their organization. So how sustainable is it? Well, the infrastructure, so it's high in terms of imitation, which means it can be easily imitated. You see, it's also highly transferable. So infrastructure is important, but you see for Xeras, it's not really helping us create a sustainable competitive advantage. The information repository is high value. It is low substitutable. The substitutability is important. So that's good. That is actually aiding the sustainable competitive advantage. But if we take a look at this heat map, what are some of the things that it looks like, so spanning IT management skills are really the strength here. And this is under our information capabilities. Remember, we had IT assets and IT capabilities. These are the categories for information resources. So under information capabilities, we've got our IT management skills. So the IT management skills are highly valuable, highly rare, low ability to imitate, low ability to substitute, a medium ability to transfer. So, I mean, that is a strength. Spanning boundaries within the organization. We talked about going from managers at the stores, connecting that to our managers at our headquarters and designers and manufacturers. So highly valuable that it is very rare. Low ability to imitate, substitute, and transfer. So spanning. So this gives you a good, although somewhat imperfect, ability to rate each of these categories, but it gives you a sense for what's value creation that would allow you to create a competitive advantage, and then what would allow you to sustain that over time under value sustainability. So the information, or that's the resource-based view of the firm, creation versus sustainability of a competitive advantage. Let's move on to strategic alliances. And strategic alliances, we're working outside the organization. We're working with other organizations. So an interorganizational relationship that affords one or more companies in the relationship a strategic advantage. One example is Delta formed an alliance with eTravel Incorporated to promote Delta's inline reservation system. It helped Delta reduce agency fees and was able to offer these like rewards to potential corporate customers. Supply chain managements are also another type of IT facilitated strategic alliance when you're working with your suppliers and your customers. And there are different levels there. You may have long-term deals with those suppliers or customers. You may provide access to your own systems to help them become more efficient, to help them improve, help reduce lead times for related to production. Since if you're a company like Zara's, where the just-in-time model is what you're looking for. And it's interesting because strategic alliances, you could also have a strategic alliance with a company that may also be your competitor. I mean, some very large companies like Apple and Samsung are both have they have strategic alliances, but they're also harsh competitors that take each other to court over software patent infringement. So supply chain management, we're looking at improving a way that a company finds raw materials that it needs to make a product or service. And some of the large companies have really led the way in terms of doing this well. So Walmart with Procter and Gamble, in actually helping with packaging, helping with shipping. So Walmart has really owned the power in the past over its suppliers like Procter and Gamble, and that but thankfully Procter companies, conglomerates are like Procter and Gamble that own many different companies and product lines. Those are really the ones that have the most power with Walmart because they have such a huge line of products. But they still bow down to Walmart with Walmart's looking for lower cost. They're looking for them to shave off a half a cent off a product, or add RFID tags to the product, but the supplier, the vendor actually bears the cost of that, not Walmart. Packaging, so actually using and also having the supplier package the product in such a way via pallets and in such a way that it makes it easy for distribution. And again, the cost is for the supplier, but it definitely helps Walmart and helps in terms of the time to make it to the sales floor. Co-opetition is where companies cooperate and compete at the same time, and I talked about Apple and Samsung, but we have lots of other companies that are doing it as well. So they find value in certain areas, and I always find these very interesting. So they have strategic alliances in one area or one product line, but they seem to have a hatred for each other in other areas. They don't always have a hatred of each other, but it's interesting to watch. So I encourage you to, if you don't know much about the Apple Samsung example, take a look at that, see what's been going on. It's still playing out in the courts, and Samsung makes many of the components of iPhones and iPads actually, as well as being one of the top mobile phone competitors. So let's talk a little bit about the risks related to information resources, and using in terms of using IT and information resources to try to compete or gain a competitive advantage. So one is that by using IT to gain a competitive advantage, you can awaken a sleeping giant. So let's say you're competing against a very large competitor. So they have a lot more, they may have deeper pockets, they have more money. They even had to do this in the past, but so they're able to then buy an even better system, and then they may nudge you out of the market. You could also demonstrate bad timing. Sometimes customers aren't ready to use the technology designed to gain a strategic advantage. So it may be a great technology, but are you the leader or are you a laggard? It's okay to lag. You don't have, there's lots of that's been written on that. Do you want to be the first in the market? Uh, I don't know. It's a very high risk if you are first to the market. Just like anything, the high risk, high reward, but there's also high risk. Um, if not successful, then it could be a big failure too. If you implement the information systems poorly, then they will fail. So a lot of failed ERP and large database or data warehousing projects that have been poorly implemented or been attempted to be implemented too fast, or you have people without any expertise actually delivering or organizing the implementation. Another risk is failing to deliver what users want. It's supposed to be want. What they deliver, not delivering what users want. The system doesn't meet the needs of the market. So that happens pretty often. There may be web-based alternatives that actually remove advantages of a new information resource. So you may have invested in a large product that in-house that is now more easily available through a web service. You may also run afoul of the law. So using IS strategically may promote litigation in some way. So, well, I mean, one way that I talked about before is infringing on business process or software patents. So we've talked about aligning IT and business strategy, but what about co-creating IT and business strategy? Rather than just, trying to follow business strategy and aligning, why not work together? Because information resources are a very important part of a firm's development of a product or service, they shouldn't be created without each other. I mean, think about financial services company. Their If their prime product is information, then the information systems is vital. It's actually a primary part of their value chain, not just a support product. So you think about FedEx and UPS. Could they function even without IT, even though they are primarily a package delivery company, UPS, and they think about the cost savings they're trying to implement. They're continuing to improve their mapping systems for drivers delivering packages. So if I forget what there was a statistic, if they were able to save, have drivers drive 1 mile less and only make right turns, they were going to be able to, their potential for millions of dollars in savings each quarter. So it's a large investment in new technology. So, but it's vital for these companies. They already utilize mapping and electronic tracking and package tracking systems, but they're continuing to invest more. They want to continue to gain a competitive advantage, so they might be able to stay cost competitive with other package shipping companies by reducing some of their own costs. So we've discussed using information systems and information resources for strategic advantage. So we've got to know more than just the technology, as we saw that information resources include the data, the technology, the people, and the processes. Also remember the local competition is a factor when we're talking about how successful we can be. But when we're looking at our competitive advantage, we've got to look at our 5 competitive forces model. So it's not just scoping out our local competitive environment. It's thinking about those competitive forces. If we're opening a pizza place, how easy is it for someone to open a pizza place? It's probably pretty easy for someone to open a pizza place. It doesn't mean it's going to be great. They may not be able to differentiate their product, but the competitive landscape uh, is fairly challenging. So think about some of those things. What are the uh, competitive forces that we said from Porter? That was one of the Porter models, his competitive forces model. We also looked at Porter's value chain model and how IS can help add value to the primary activities of business, and in some cases might even be considered uh, part of the primary activity, but typically it's considered a support area for a business. But we want to know also, we also looked at the resource-based view of the firm and how we can look at our information resources and whether or not they're able to provide us with a competitive or sustainable competitive advantage over time. We can also look at the risks associated with using information systems to gain a strategic advantage. Um, we looked at some of those risks, and there are risks, but we've got to weigh those risks as opposed to not having a competitive advantage, and will we be able to survive?